right, good morning, everyone. We'll call the meeting of the Development Committee of August 3rd to order. Roll call.
Member Krajewski,
Here.
Member Covert, Member Garcia,
Here.
Member Ozog,
Here.
Member Rutledge,
Here.
Chair Tornatori.
Here. I ask for a motion from the body to amend the agenda, moving the Building and Zoning Department budget discussion to the end of the meeting, because we do have other people and other.
Sorry, Don.
Forward. But it won't take long. We just want to keep it as long as we can, Don. So. We have a motion. Is there a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
We have public comment this morning. We have one commenter on two things. Bill Lukey has. Bill,
Actually, all I'm going to comment is on item G.
okay,
The other one.
go
I
ahead.
just wanted to let you know, item G, it's before you. It was approved by the zoning hearing officer. It is the flip side of a sign. We're changing it from a static billboard to an electronic. No other variations. The variations were already granted by this board probably 6 years ago. I may be wrong, a year, but it's a sign that we converted one face, and now we're just converting the second face. I didn't want to take up much of your time, but thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, that concludes the public comment portion of the meeting. I'll move on to approval of the minutes. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of July 2nd.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any additions, corrections, or deletions? Hearing and seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Then the minutes are approved. Moving on to budget transfers, I'll entertain a motion to approve budget transfer to transfer funds to cover the cost of licensing for the Acela program and increase in public notices, advertising for zoning division. Any questions, comments on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I'll entertain a motion to approve change order 1, county contract 3637-0001, serve issued to Conwico and Associates to decrease and close the contract.
So moved.
Second. Any questions, comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Moving on to regulatory services, item 7A. Those of you who were here before, you know that I have a business relationship with Trine Construction, so I'm going to recuse myself, move this to Vice Chair Garcia to take care of this, and then I'm just going to step out and be right back, hopefully.
I look for a move to approve action item 7A, approval as essentially in accord, the removal of planned development portion of the conditional use for Z21-011, Trine Construction as essentially in accord with the approved site plan and zoning entitlement granted by the county board on April 27, 2021.
So moved.
Second. All ayes.
Well, we have to roll call it since Sam stepped out.
Essentially in accordance.
So there's a provision in the zoning ordinance that allows the development committee to take a look at a previously approved zoning case by the county board and make a determination that what the petitioner is asking for is essentially in accord with what the county board approved. And in this case, the petitioner asked for too much zoning relief. He asked for conditional use with a planned development. Typically, planned developments are for projects that include multiple buildings, multiple uses. That has some significance in with outside activity, title work, mortgage, insurance, and things like that. So they're looking to drop the planned development portion of the conditional use and just keep the conditional use because this is a single operator with storage inside and outside the building. It's not a multi-use development.
So they're reducing a lot of the relief that they asked for that they didn't really need, but it's still in accord, essentially in accordance with the
Correct. With ultimately what the county board approved. It's less zoning relief.
right, less zoning.
Okay, roll call vote.
Member Ozog,
Yes.
Member Rutledge,
Aye.
Member Garcia,
Aye.
Member Krajewski.
Aye. I have Chairman Tornatori come back in.
Thank you, Vice Chair Garcia. Moving on to item B, I will entertain a motion to approve DCO 69-21 ordinance Z2121. The zoning hearing officer's recommendation to approve a conditional use to allow an existing deck to remain less than 3 feet from the interior site property line.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions,
I do
comments?
have a question on
Yes,
this one.
Member Robles.
I believe this was the one, that's- in the language, it said that if they were to allow this variance, that this gentleman would not be able to run a business out of his house. Is that the one is that the correct item on the agenda that I was looking at?
That's, run a business on the property. That's just the standard condition that the hearing officer likes to place on a lot of conditional uses. Because they run, this one is running for 10 years. And just to kind of solidify that. Even though it's for a deck, he does that a lot for sheds, and most of his conditional uses, just in case they happen to use that for any type of, business that they might run, just to solidify that they don't use that for the property.
Because it didn't, I'm sorry.
No.
It did not look like there was a business being run out of there, right?
Right,
Just
it's
a
just in
residence.
case any items do come up in the future,
Okay.
Well,
based on testimony or neighbors' concern. So,
since I have run a business out of my home before, I don't like this. I don't think that building a shed a deck way at the back of your property should be able to circumvent this person from, what if he was an accountant and he had an office, in a bedroom?
Right, and we do have, home occupation is permitted, it's for a certain square footage inside the house.
Understand, I know all of those regulations very well, thank you. But I think that building a deck should not preclude you from running a business out of your residence, and that's I'm happy to approve this, but I don't like that at all. Capitalistic America, you should be able to run a business if you fit the criteria of what's allowed in the county. So,
Oh, you're pacing, not counting.
Well, we want to make sure that we distinguish between a business and a home occupation. This would not preclude someone from running a home occupation from their home, which is permitted in a residential zoning district. It would preclude someone from running a business. And there's some specific language as to what's a business versus home occupation. So the type of activity that you're talking about, someone having an accountant or lawyer or real estate practice
That'd be a
inside
home
their home,
occupation.
that would be a home occupation. And this condition would not preclude that from occurring on this property or in the property.
so the business, would that be defined as customers in and out? I don't know, where do you draw that line?
Well, there's a specific definition in the zoning ordinance relative to home occupations, about 12 or 15 different items. And essentially what it is, no retail, no commercial equipment, no commercial machinery, has to occur inside the principal building, can't even occur in an attached garage. So there are very specific things that are home occupations. Can't have any outside employees, things like that. And that's the difference between a home occupation and business. So this, once again, would not preclude someone from having a home occupation inside the house. You'll see on a lot of these conditions that the hearing officer and ultimately the zoning board of appeals puts these conditions just to make absolutely sure that people know they cannot run a business out of their home. But once again, it doesn't preclude home occupation.
But aside from this deck building, he wouldn't be able to run a business out of his home that met the criteria of what the county, or is that the determination? No home business, but no business, but a home occupation.
Correct. And some might look at it and say it's a difference without a distinction.
Yeah,
But we use the term home occupation to make it crystal clear that it's not a business. There are certain things that you would look at the home occupation criteria and you would say, well, that seems like a business. But those things have been vetted as to make sure that the type of operation, type of occupation that's occurring in the home is very limited. It's limited to the person who lives there, no outside employees, no retail sales, no commercial equipment. If we were to say a business, then someone might look at the business definition on zoning ordinance and see that there are many things that you can do as a business that would include commercial vehicles, commercial equipment, things like that. So we distinguish in the home occupation section the type of things you can do as your home. You might think of it as a business. We think of it technically as an
Okay.
occupation.
Right.
Does that make sense?
yeah, it does. Thank you, Paul.
And but you're not allowed to have like signage out in front of the house if it's a home occupation. I know that was something in the municipality I worked at, you were not allowed to do.
Correct.
That would be a business.
We do, for instance, that's another example, is that we do allow an outside placard that basically says your name and your address. So that when someone comes to the door,
What
They know it's-
if I remember?
they know it's you and they know it's your address. But I can't say Paul's, Paul's accounting service. I can say Paul Haas with my address so they know they're at the right place. But it's not the typical commercial signage that you would see. It's basically a nameplate.
I don't think this deck really had anything to do with businesses.
Okay.
And I don't think it changes the ordinance in any way. I think it's just kind of the uniqueness
just
of
one
the
of-
zoning hearing officer and what he decided to put on this particular.
Again, I have no problem approving this item. I just wanted to clarify the language and the, what they were asking.
It
this
doesn't change
person
the
to sign.
ordinance. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
We need a roll call on that since we changed the vote from the last.
Oh, right.
Oh, I apologize. Okay, roll call, please. You're right.
Member Ozark,
Yes.
member Garcia,
Aye.
member Krajewski,
Aye.
member Rutledge.
Aye.
Chair Tornatori.
Aye. And the motion carries. I'll entertain a motion to approve DC 070-720, I'm sorry, yes, 21 ordinance Z 2145. The zoning hearing officer's recommendation to approve a conditional use to allow an existing pond to remain less than 10 feet from the rear property line.
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions, comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. I'll entertain a motion to approve DC 071-21 ordinance Z 2146 Avilas. This is zoning hearing officer's recommendation to approve a conditional use to allow an existing shed to remain less than 3 feet from the interior side property line.
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions, comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. I'll entertain a motion to approve DC 072-21 ordinance C 2147 Kozak. Also, a zoning hearing officer's recommendation to approve a conditional use to allow an existing shed to remain less than 3 feet from the interior side property line where the shed has existed for at least 5 years.
So moved. Second.
Motion and second. Any questions, comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. I'll entertain a motion to approve DC 073-21 ordinance C 2152. The zoning hearing officer's recommendation to approve a variation to increase the height of a fence in the corner side yard from 4.5 feet to approximately 6 feet, and a variation to increase the opacity of the fence in the corner side yard from 50% rather to 100%.
Second.
Motion is second. Any questions, comments? Hearing none, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I'll entertain a motion to approve DC 074-21 ordinance C 2153 Lamar. The zoning hearing officer's recommendation to approve a conditional use to allow LED panel on the west face of an existing billboard.
So moved. Second.
Motion is second. Any questions, comments? Hearing none, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. I'll entertain a motion to approve DC 075-21 ordinance C 2154. Fulia zoning hearing officer's recommendation to approve a variation to increase the height of a fence in the corner side yard from 4.5 feet to approximately 6 feet, and a variation to increase the opacity of a fence in the corner side yard from 50% to 100%.
So moved. Second.
So motion is second. Any questions, comments? Hearing none, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Finally, I'll entertain a motion to approve DC 076-21 ordinance C 2155 Lawrence. The zoning hearing officer's recommendation to approve variation to increase the opacity of the fence in the front yard from 50% to 100%.
So moved. Second.
Motion is second. Any questions, comments? Hearing none, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Okay, that concludes the regulatory services portion. Now we will move on to the FY22 Building and Zoning Department budget discussion. Jim, is that you?
So thank you for the opportunity to go over our budget today. We've got a brief PowerPoint that we'll go through. Again, the next slide, please. So this is just a quick recap of our goals and objectives. I do want to point out on this slide something very important, and that is that we are considered an enterprise fund, so our budget does not impact the general fund. Our budget is supported through the sale of building permits, zoning entitlements, flat hearings, communication fees and fines, those type of things. So everything that we do is not impacted by the general fund. Right now, our staff is 28 people. That's all of our permit techs, building inspectors, code enforcement, zoning people, call center, kiosk. It's the whole group. Next slide, please. So this is just a quick recap of the 3 different divisions that we have. We're made up of 3 divisions for the building division, the zoning and planning division, and the environmental division. Building division handles all the permitting. The zoning division is responsible for all the zoning cases that you just heard today. They also run code enforcement in the adjudication program. Our environmental division works closely. We have a delegation agreement with the Illinois EPA for code enforcement on behalf of the EPA and non-hazardous waste inspections. They go through all of the transfer stations. They handle non-hazardous complaints on behalf. So if somebody dumps something, as long as it's not in the water, if it's in the water, it goes through stormwater department. And if it's an air complaint, the state has a Bureau of Air that handles that. So we pretty much handle the rest of the stuff for the state. I can have the next slide. So this is just kind of a quick, we wanted to give you a bit of a history of where we're at over the last number of years. So you can kind of see the trend that we're looking at. The number of permits that we've issued has gone up steadily. This only goes back to 2016, but we've been increasing since 2013 when we really started tracking it this way. I think in 2013, we had about 2,500 permits. So we have really seen a lot of trending in the right direction for our department. Our call center activities, our call center handles all the calls that come into the office. They also schedule for the building inspectors. And they also take calls for the stormwater departments that come in to our area as well. The number of inspections obviously has gone up every year. That includes code enforcement inspections as well as building inspections. We do all that with 3 people in the call center, and we've got two code enforcement officers, 3 building inspectors, a plumbing inspector, and then our chief inspector also does inspections as well. Customer served is it's the people that are coming in and seeing our permit texts and things like that. And so while we only issue, 3,500 permits, they make multiple trips in and out of the office to make that happen. That's also people who simply get to the kiosk and don't go any further. They may be dropping something off. They may be turned away if their stuff is incomplete. Adjudication cases are continuing to rise. The code enforcement people are doing a great job. Paul has really streamlined that process. We tend to send out 40 to 50 summons every hearing schedule. And he has implemented an agreed order program where we actually hear the cases. If they will agree that, yes, I did put that shed on my property, and yes, it needed a permit, we'll allow them to basically resolve that case with Paul out in the atrium area. It comes in and that case gets finalized by the hearing officer without a trial, minimal fine. And then they agree typically within 30 days, I will go ahead and get my permit. Surprisingly, they tend to go, I didn't do it until they get a summons. And then they show up and they go, okay, I guess I need to do something now because I'm actually in front of the hearing officer. It's cut way down on the number of trials that we have, so it's allowed us to hear more cases. If you have 3 or 4 trials, it can take 4 hours. But we can get through with the agreed order program and 40 cases. It's really spectacular the way that's worked out. The zoning applications obviously are continuing to rise. The ZHO cases are probably the biggest success in that whole thing. The ability for our zoning hearing officer to hear 7, 8 cases in one sitting, as opposed to the ZBA, the entire zoning board of appeals having to come in for 1 case on a Thursday night. We have to pay the county court reporters to come in and do the transcript. It's not nearly as efficient. We save that more for the big cases that we're having to have anything controversial to them. And then are trying to, Paul and Jessica have done a great job of feeding more of those cases into the ZHO hearing officer. I think in 2016, is that when we started the ZHO program, or was it 15? 15. So obviously it's greatly improved our efficiency. And then FOIAs, we just simply get a lot of FOIAs. People are always calling us or sending in their requests for information. And we have Eileen as a full-time person dedicated to essentially nothing but filling FOIAs and then some other paperwork to help support the zoning division.
Quick question, though. I see here that you had a reduction of about 200 FOIAs from 18 to 19.
Yeah.
And it seems like that stayed fairly constant. Any thought on that or just?
Not sure.
Okay. All right.
It's everything to you. Any thought, Paul, on what that would be about?
I think what that could be is,
Online.
That could very well be.
Yeah.
More stuff online that people don't have to FOIA move now.
Everything we have is online. It's available. I think so. I think more people
one of the
are
other
saying-
things that we've done relative to that is that we can actually answer, when people are actually looking for FOIAs, before they go through the full process, we can actually get them into Jessica or me or one of the other staff to actually answer the question without having to go through a form FOIA.
Awesome. Sounds good.
Yeah.
So, if we can get the next slide.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Sorry,
So
Mr.
this is
Chairman.
just kind of a high level look at some of the big projects that we've been working on. And we've talked in the last couple of years about the permitting software. We're switching from the Govern program, which we've had for 21 years now. It's reached the end of its useful life. They are no longer supporting it. So we have purchased, last year we entered into a contract with the Acela organization to purchase their civic platform. So we are, Stormwater is already working on a small version of that. They, about 3 years ago, they purchased a very limited aspect of it. We bought the whole package because we need it for every aspect of our office, from finance to inspections to the actual permitting process. And that is in conjunction with Stormwater, Department of Transportation, and Public Works. So we will all be on the same platform, which is really helpful to be able to see what each of the individual groups is doing. It makes it a little bit easier for the customer. They're applying for something with us, and they can actually online just by tabbing over to DOT, go pay their impact fee, and come back to our office without having to come into the office and make a separate trip. It will eventually be an entirely paperless online program. That's the goal. It's going to take some time to get to that point. We are really going to have to it's going to take a lot of technology and a lot of training in our office and a lot of public outreach to make that happen. We met with the city of Omaha. They've been at it for a number of years now, and they're at about 80 to 85% paperless. And then they have equipment so that people can come in and apply in the office and turn it into paperless. So we're going to be basically repurposing everybody's job in the office. Right now, where you would come into the kiosk and start the process of getting a tracking number and being set to go in and meet with the permit tech, they'll actually be helping you to get online. So we're going to have, the plan is a number of laptops available if you can't do this at home, where we'll kind of show you how to do it, help you enter a profile, help you start your permit. We'll be able to scan their documents if they can't scan full-size pages and things like that, and send them to their laptop so they can attach it to their application. And then they pay the fee and they leave. They don't ever have to go in and see a permit tech. We'll also do an appointment-only basis for people that absolutely can't handle the technology. And we'll essentially help them enter into the system. And we'll ultimately take their paperwork at that point and still convert it electronically. Because the way it works right now is when a building inspector goes to do a building inspection, he takes a paper file with him. So that won't be available. So he'll have a tablet or a laptop, and he'll have to look at that. And then the customer will also have information available at their house for him to see. So we're hoping that that's going to be more efficient over time. It's going to take a while to actually make that work. But we think it'll work. The thing is, we're going to have to repurpose a lot of different jobs, and it's going to be implementing it very difficult. I guess the next piece would be that during COVID and in the last 2 years, we've had a tremendous amount of success with shared services. We teamed up with facilities and with Itasca for the Nordic treatment plant with Nick in the Public Works Department. So we will be issuing the permit for the Nordic plant and doing all the inspections. That's with Itasca. And then we teamed up with Facilities, Public Works, and the City of Wheaton to do all of the CARES funding that Tim's group did on all the repairs on the buildings here on campus. So that worked out very well for us. It worked out very well for facilities. We were able to expedite the permitting and get it through. And the whole process was pretty streamlined, so that was nice. Our environmental division is going to continue to do their PPE and other initiatives for sustaining Cool DuPage that they started in 2022. Paul's group is going to continue with the Clean and Lean and the LTA grant that they got up on Lake Street. I think that kind of stalled a little during COVID, but they picked that back up now. They've selected a vendor who's going to do the work. So I think some funding was just recently approved in the Department of Transportation, the matching fund that we had to come up with. They're doing that out of the impact fees. So now that we've got that documentation to CMAP, they're getting ready to move forward on that. So that project will move forward. Paul will be bringing updates on that later as that thing goes along, the public hearings and things like that. So that's a design to redo some of the zoning and impacts that the unincorporated areas have in the surrounding communities. The west end of Lake Street, some of it is not the greatest. It needs some updates, and this will help us to try and improve the zoning, create some overlay areas up there with the advice of the surrounding communities that really affects. So hopefully we can get some of that cleaned up and get it moving forward. Next slide. So this is just some revenue projections. We're projecting that the building permit fees will stay essentially the same. The state operating grant, that's the Illinois EPA grant we were talking about. Service fees is the money that we get from DuPage transfer station that's paid to us from West Chicago. We provide again, through the IEPA, but we provide inspections of the facility because we've got trained personnel in non-hazardous waste inspections. So as part of that, we get a tipping fee. That facility was originally built in the county and then was later annexed. But because they didn't have the personnel to do it, they just continued to have us do it. And entered into an agreement probably 15 or 20 years ago. And that has just continued. Registration application fees, I think maybe will be down a little bit. The violation inspection fees are down. It's simply because we've changed our process a little bit. That used to be where you got a violation notice, you had a $100 fee, and you had to, call for the reinspection and then pay the fee before we came back out to confirm compliance. And we're really getting more compliance through applying for your building permit. It seems redundant to charge somebody $100 for their inspection when they've actually come in to get the permit. And then if they go to adjudication, they're getting hit with a fine at adjudication anyway. So we really aren't using that unless we absolutely have to. Court fines, that's adjudication fees. Bond forfeiture, we've kind of reduced that a little bit. We're just not really sure where that's going to be. And that's the other reimbursements. It's pretty much where we're at.
How about contingencies? Is that ARPA money? Or
no, the contingencies is basically what happens is we've got some one-time expenses that'll be coming up here, which we'll get to on the next slide. And that's essentially because we're budgeting so far out and we're
just coming out of reserve.
Yeah, we're so
what's your balance,
Our balance is around 6 million.
6 million going into this.
Yeah, so we've got a healthy balance.
And then for these budgeted revenue numbers, 2021, are they, like in 20, what was the actual?
I think our actual.
That'd be more concerned. And then how we're looking this year, these numbers kind of.
2020, you were actually over your budget.
We were over
We were
our budget.
over the budget in 2020.
For revenues, and then what about 21? Are we projected to be over?
21 right now, we're about
Right on.
right on with the margin of error. We're like
Okay.
a little under 200,000 behind.
Okay.
Right now, which isn't terrible for us, and we always.
Well, with 200,000 behind, maybe we shouldn't be
Well,
budgeted the same as this current year. Or do you think it'll pick up?
We're hoping it'll pick up. Historically, we're always behind in December, January, February, sometimes even into April. It all depends on the winter. We usually pick up in May, June, July, August, and then depending on the weather, December can actually still even be a good month for us. So we always come in stronger at the end of the year than we do at the beginning. And so all we can do
Those
is
20 numbers were over in 21. We think they're going to be.
yeah.
Okay.
I think we were over in 19 as well. I'd have to take a look and get back to that. But historically, we've trended to within 100 or 200,000 of our projection. So we've done pretty well with that. Can we go to the next slide? So total personnel budget does go up a little bit. And we've got some issues with, not issues, the reason behind that is that's where we've got some one-time expenses. We've got a couple of our senior people who'll be retiring this year who are going to be eligible for retention. So we've budgeted, I think, $170,000 to cover those guys. We also anticipate, because there was no ability for staff to sell vacation last year, we're thinking we're probably going to have a fairly high demand of people who want to do that this year. There was no ability to sell vacation, and there was nowhere to go to take one. So we think we're going to have a lot of people who are just like, you know what, pay me. After December 1st into the next budget is when that expires. And so we were trying to anticipate that. We also had the 2% in the original budget last year. There was no 2%. So we increased in the middle of the year, 2% this year, and we're anticipating 2% next year. So that's automatically going to bring our budget up with the personnel item as well.
Yeah, we're up like 12% in personnel, but that's good it's in there. But Nick, are we gonna see that in some of these other ones? I mean, Jim put it in here, people that are doing retention, we got those big retention payouts.
The difference is, yes, general fund budgets that for the other ones. Being an enterprise fund, he has to live and die within his fund.
Right, so he put it in here, but so the other ones, in the general fund, we'll see it in the contingency.
Yes, the
Number, it won't
2%,
be in the department.
that's correct. The 2% is.
I'm more concerned about the retention.
Because, yeah, that's not within the general fund department budget.
We'll put
That's
it in
within the
the
overall.
contingency.
Yes.
We'll put a number in there, what our best guess is on the retention.
And they have a pretty good track record of kind of knowing how long people, we've got a list, I see the list of who's still got it, how long they've been here, and they kind of track when they think.
And that same issue with the vacation that wasn't able to sell, they'll put that in. Okay.
So just real quick, the total commodities, contractual, and capital. We don't have any large capital improvements expected this year. And then contractuals, some of these, that's going to be things like the Acela software. As part of that, we're purchasing an additional software called Bluebeam. So we've got some additional fees that go with that. Bluebeam is an online software that you use to do plan review. So we've got 4 seats in the Bluebeam program, and then we actually get that through a third-party vendor, so we have to pay our fees for that as well. So the Acela software is considerably more expensive than Govern was, but it's kind of a state-of-the-art program, and it's to get us on board with the same program that everybody else is doing. So it seemed like the way to go, and we think that that's going to work out for us.
Quick question on that. Is training included with that?
Training is included. Most of it's going to be virtual. I don't know because of COVID that they're going to be able to send anybody out, but we've been working with them since I think June of last year virtually, and it's worked out pretty well. So we have weekly meetings where, in a real plus side to it is they are able to bring over all of our current data and Govern. We worked really hard with them to reformat it into their permitting system. So we'll be able to have access to all of our current records. That was one of the big sticking points 4 years ago when stormwater went with them. They weren't able to do that. They were doing it through a third-party vendor, and the vendor couldn't make it happen. So the staff that's at Acela now has figured out how to make that work.
That saves a lot of time. Okay.
There's a lot. We've got thousands and thousands of permits that go back years in our permitting system. So that's a real plus for us. So yeah, we'll be paying additional fees for the Acela, the licenses, and then additionally for the other software. Yes. Go ahead.
Do you have a backstop date where how far back you go when you're doing something like this?
We actually have microphone back to 1938.
Okay.
That helps us with
Well, I
that.
guess historically,
Historically.
we'll go all the way back.
Yeah, we'll look at a lot of stuff going back. A lot of Eileen, most of her work is done in the microphone area. We have been scanning electronically since 2006.
Okay,
So we keep 5 years of permit activity on the floor.
okay,
And then at the end of 5 years, when the 6th year, we send that out to a company to have it scanned, we get it back as an electronic file.
okay,
And then they dispose of the old files for us.
okay.
So
So
we
you're
have,
5 years.
so we have 5 years hard copy in the office right now. And then we also have a legacy system that was plus, it's called the plus system, which is what we were using before govern. They were able to bring all of the plus files in with no data attached to them other than a permit number. But it's attached to the parcel number, so you can actually look up a parcel number, see that there was a plus file, and you get to go look in the microfilm, find out what it was for. But so we have access way back into the 70s with permitting access, and then beyond that, I'm not sure how you actually find something from the 40s, but it's in there. So,
All right,
yeah.
thank you.
Are they, quick question, when they're bringing in new files and they need the information in the field, I mean, are they putting it into the system so that they can pull up the files and say, we'll no longer have the files at
Yes.
that point in time?
So
So then would you still keep the 5 years at that point in time? Because isn't it
It-
already being,
it will be digital at that point.
it will be
so,
digital, so
yeah.
then you
So-
will no longer be keeping the 5 years?
Well, yes, as we time out, we'll have 5 that we have now because we're not going to have those digitally, but as we progress, so 5 years from now, we won't have any.
That's what I thought.
stored
Okay,
paper
perfect.
files in the office, that will all go away.
So is DOT, Public Works and Storm are all using this system, or is ours, that system just being integrated with what they're currently using?
No, they'll all be using the same system.
Okay.
So, right, so,
Everybody's installing something.
right, we're all putting it in. So historically, we were all.
Everybody's throwing their portion of their special revenue fund into one big software.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, we were all on government together, stormwater separated a couple of years ago, like you said, they went to the Acela program, because government really wasn't supporting what they wanted. And the problem we were all facing at the time was, we were on governed 10.2 version, and they were gonna no longer support that version, they wanted everybody to go into their cloud-based system. We looked at it, it was okay for us, but it didn't meet the needs of DOT because it's a parcel-driven software, so for us, it tells you what's on your property, but it doesn't tell them what's in the road. And that was a big non-starter for those guys. They've been kind of doing a workaround for the last 20 years to figure out how to do their road permitting. And they're like, we want one that can actually attach a permit to a location in the road, which they can do now. So the Acela system should help tremendously for them.
Thank you, Chairman. Since we're on the subject of Acela, you said you have 28 employees. 2 questions about that is, do you consider that fully staffed, or would you like to see additions to your talent pool?
That would take us to the next slide.
Oh, okay. And then, well, my second half of that question is, you said that they'll all have to have tablets in the field.
Yes.
Have we requisitioned those yet, or?
We have already met with Joe in IT, and he's working on finding a solution for those. We have selected a style of equipment that we'd like to have, Surface Pro, I think it is. So you get the tablet
Surface.
with the detachable keyboard so that they can type on a keyboard in their vehicles and just take the tablet out and walk around with that. The tablet in the field should be really efficient for us because it's going to automatically give your inspection response. You can write your comments down and you will email them directly to the applicant. You can take a picture on the spot. And when somebody calls and goes, I didn't do that, I can look at the picture right there on the spot and go, yes, there is a shed on your yard. I don't know what to tell you.
Timestamp.
Yeah, so it'll make us a lot more efficient.
Will you
Because
ultimately be able to reduce your head count because of the technology?
I don't think so. Part of the problem we have in the field is we cover the entire field. I know that when I was inspecting, I routinely drove 100 miles a day. So you were and we were dedicated to specific townships. We still drove that much because we are the space in between. So you just have no choice. There's no other way to do it. So from an inspection standpoint, no. From a code enforcement standpoint, I mean, they are swamped. Our overtime is much higher than it's been. Somebody calls and complains, for example, there's a commercial vehicle that comes to my neighbor's house. We go by during the day, it's at work. So we have to pay overtime to send somebody out there at night or on a weekend. And then we find the commercial vehicle and we can write a violation, tell them they gotta stop doing it.
One of those last week.
Yes,
Thank you.
so we get that all the time. So from that standpoint, we could actually probably use third code enforcement person instead of just the 2. It's kind of amazing that they do such a good job with 2 people covering the entire county. So it's pretty impressive. So some of the things that we see, a bunch of considerations and stuff coming in the future. So like I said, this winter, we expect to go online in early December with the new permitting software. Some of the other considerations that we've had, indirect costs. This was something that came back to us last year. We hadn't had it for a few years. It's a tough one for us because we have to generate the revenue to pay $231,000 in direct costs. The retirement of the 2 senior staff, like I was saying, I'm sorry, budget 140. I think I misspoke and said 170. It's 170 with the selling and vacation. So we're looking at that. The additional question was about headcount that you had, Sheila. And we were a staff of 32 people before the recession hit. We went down to 24. We've gone back up to 28. We would really like the board's permission to seek another person. Part of that is with the implementation of software, a lot of the tasks that the individual groups in the department are going to be doing are going to change dramatically. Some of the things that the permit technicians used to do, we've actually handed off to the kiosk, and they won't be able to do them any longer because they're going to have a completely different interaction with the public. So we think that we'd like to get somebody around the verbal tech level and add that person into our headcount to help take that void up and take on some of the additional roles. Almost, I don't want to say a coordinator position for the software. The software itself calls it a coordinator position because when somebody applies, you have to distribute the applications to people. You have to assign them. It's not a coordinator position at our level like what all of Jessica's is. This would be somebody that would be more like basically a lead on a tech, something like that. Somebody who's a little more IT based because we're going to get a lot of questions. Call center is not going to be able to handle all of them. You can't direct them out to the kiosk because they're going to be helping the customers. Permit technicians are going to be, reviewing the applications as they come. So that's something we really like permission to proceed with. That works with you guys. If at all possible, sooner rather than later. I know we put it into the budget. We're hoping to put it in the budget for next year. But the rollout is in December. If we could have somebody in the office during the training process, that would be even better. But that's a decision we would have to have your support. That's really all I've got. Does anybody have any questions?
Any other questions? Yes.
This is kind of a personal question because I don't like, I'm not a fan of elevators, but when you showed us the elevator inspection fee, it's down like 38%. Why is that? Are we not inspecting elevators as much?
We're inspecting. I don't think we have as many elevators as we used to.
Okay.
We do inspect. We have a private contractor with a contract with the contractor, Northern Illinois Elevator Inspection Services. So they go out routinely. We work very closely with a guy named Steve. He's the new guy for the Office of the State Fire Marshal. Met with him just a few weeks ago, in fact.
It's down that much though, 38%.
Yeah, well, we have a lot of vacant structures. We have some vacant churches. We have some vacant facilities. They get an inspection, but there's really nothing that happens in those. It's really more of a, yes, is it locked out or does it need to be locked out? And, is everything up and running?
My second question is about that personnel. You said that you'd like to hire one more person. Does that take into account the 2 senior staff members who are retiring, will you be replacing them?
Yes,
I
we will.
assume. Okay.
They are our office supervisor. Definitely need to replace her and our chief building inspector.
Okay, and if they have been here for some time, the new people you hire might not make as much as they have
Correct.
made. So you could hire that third person perhaps with the money that they would be saving.
That will probably be the case. And we've also had a vacancy in the department for the last 2 months, and we don't anticipate having anybody in here until probably September. So we've got 3 months of salary that we haven't paid. It was a higher position that we'd be hiring at. So we've got some savings there right now.
Thank you.
So if you got $6 million in reserve, that's more than a years of your salary. You have the money to hire the person that really need it. I mean,
We can definitely use it.
yeah, well, you got $6 million, that's what the number is, and that's way more than a year's worth of your entire budget. If that's the budget, you got the money, you might as well really need to put it in there.
Anybody else? have any
One more
questions?
question. How's the hiring of Andy's replacement coming? I think I talked to Joy a couple of weeks ago that
We have interviewed 3 people. I believe that they make the offer.
Yeah, I signed it.
I sent the people. We interviewed a fantastic young lady. She's from California, but she graduated from Wheaton College, so she's, I guess, local. She's leaving California and she's on her way back to Illinois, and She would probably be, if we get her through placing names and background check by the end of the month, hopefully, she'll be on the last meeting in August at the county board for placing names, and we'd love to have her in here at the beginning of September.
And that position was.
That's the outreach person for the environmental development. Yeah, our last person left to work for the US EPA.
So, anything else, if possible, for the budget, obviously the budget that's presented in front of you, the draft budget includes incorporation of the additional one employee. We would like to move forward with that and potentially get it lined out, so it'll be in the 22 budget, but we will start probably advertising for that position before the 22 budget. We just won't move forward with filling it till after December 1. The one takeaway would be the permit levels that are coming into this department are higher now than they were before the recession in 08, 09. And we had 4 or 5 more people on staff at that point. So it's crazy down there, the level of work that the building and zoning department is doing. I mean, you think COVID impacted a lot, but the number of permits went through the roof because people were at home. I mean, that's the one area, it's hurt everything else, but in building and zoning permits, there were lines down the hall. So the faster we can get this person on, the better.
Find somebody that's good, I wouldn't wait till December 1st. They may wind up moving on somewhere else. I mean, find it.
Yes, yeah, that'd be my
I mean,
concern.
with and like you said, we have
plenty of money in
the reserves.
And it's an enterprise fund.
Yeah, and I will say, we're very careful because, we talk monthly about the level of reserves because we are so dependent upon the economy. And so every month we track it, and we'll lag higher in order to balance it. But because in 08, 09, it was really, really painful. But that's why we have that reserve. So if that's the will of the committee, we very much like to move forward now. If we find somebody good, we'll do a head count change midstream here.
Absolutely.
Okay. Is there a consensus among the committee to go forward?
Yes, yes.
All right, so you have your direction, and I know that there's a meeting at 11:30. But let me just say a couple of. This is unlike other budget presentations because the enterprise fund. We're not looking to tap onto the taxpayers per se. Jim, Paul, Jessica, and the whole department spends what they make essentially. So it's truly a business. I'm obviously very prejudiced. What this department does is not only decide whether somebody can keep a shed on their property, but deals with environmental, code enforcement, people who are angry when they come in, when they get something, dealing with municipalities and townships and individuals, and quite frankly, they do it with a smile on their face. Very, very seldom do we get complaints from people. The Clean and Lean program, of course, we hit it out of the park when we started with that. So all of those things, being said, you guys have done a great job. It's wonderful to know that whatever you're spending is money that we're making, and we don't, have to be concerned. And then even with reserves, you're still watching the bottom line, and that's always been the case. And I think the zoning hearing officer that we started in 2015 is again streamlined so many things, not only for us but for the public as well. So kudos to all of you. Any other questions of Jim? Okay, we don't have any. Thank you for the presentation. Moving on to old business. Do we have any old business?
Nope. One thing with all these sheds, we just went from 50 to 100% offensive.
People want privacy.
Why not? I'm just saying, should we just change the ordinance? We keep granting them all, and we have 3 of them today that go from 50 to 100, to give them the ability to do it.
The problem with that is you can't have it in certain areas, and now you get safety issues if you got it on a corner or something. So you got to be careful. What I find interesting in what we're doing, considering the amount of properties that have been annexed into municipalities over the 10 or 15 years, the fact that there's so many more applications coming in, it would not necessarily seem to make a lot of sense, but for the fact that people want to come here, people want to build here, and we're good at what we do. So I think that's important. Any new business? Hearing none, seeing none, without objection, we're adjourned. Thank you all.